The first thing I noticed was the smell, not the familiar scent of lavender oil I had rubbed into my wooden dresser for years, nor the faint trace of old books that clung to the curtains like a quiet memory. No, this was sharp, artificial, something like citrus mixed with chemicals. It didn't belong. I stood at the doorway of my room, my fingers tightening around the handle of my walking cane, and stared. My bed was covered in a bright, unfamiliar bedspread, something glossy and loud with patterns that made my eyes ache. My neatly folded shawl was gone. The framed photograph of my late husband, Daniel, which always sat by the bedside, had been replaced with a decorative vase holding plastic flowers. Plastic. For a moment I wondered if I had entered the wrong room. But no, the crack in the wall above the window was still there, shaped like a crooked branch. The sunlight still fell at that exact angle in the late afternoon. This was my room, and yet it wasn't. A voice behind me broke the silence. "Oh, you're back." I turned slowly. There she stood, Sana, my daughter-in-law, arms folded, expression calm, almost indifferent. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look apologetic. She looked settled. "What is this?" I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. She stepped forward, glancing past me into the room as if admiring her own work. "I've moved my things in," she said. "This room has better light and space. It makes more sense for me." Heart gave a small, painful thud. "Your things?" "Yes," she shrugged. "You can take the smaller room at the back. It's empty now. I've already had your stuff moved." I blinked at her, trying to process the words. Your stuff moved, without asking, without telling. 74 years of living had taught me many things: patience, restraint, silence when needed. But in that moment all I felt was a strange stillness, like the air before a storm. "This is my room," I said. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "It was. But we all have to adjust, Alexa. It's my house too. My house too." The words echoed in my mind, twisting something deep inside me. I had lived in this house for 43 years. I had chosen every tile, every curtain, every nail hammered into these walls. I had raised my son here, her husband. I had watched him take his first steps across this very floor, and now I was being told to adjust. I could feel my pulse in my ears, but my voice remained steady. "Where is my husband's photograph?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second, then gestured casually toward the hallway. "I put some of your old things in a box. They didn't match the new decor." Old things? Daniel wasn't an old thing. He was my life. I nodded slowly, as if her words made perfect sense. As if nothing inside me was breaking. "I see," I said. She seemed satisfied with that response. "Good, I'm glad you understand. The smaller room will be more comfortable for you anyway. Less to manage." That word again, so easily used, so easily twisted. I stepped away from the doorway, letting her pass into the room she had claimed as hers. She moved with confidence, adjusting a cushion, smoothing the bedspread, already at home. I walked down the hallway without another word. But inside me something had changed. The smaller room at the back of the house was colder, not just in temperature, but in feeling. The window was smaller, the light weaker. It had once been used for storage, then occasionally for guests. Now it was meant to be my space. My belongings were stacked in boxes, some carelessly, some half open. I spotted my shawl crumpled beneath a pile of books. Daniel's photograph was leaning against the wall, the frame slightly scratched. I picked it up, brushing away the dust with trembling fingers. "Well," I whispered softly, looking at his familiar face, "it seems we've been moved." For a moment I allowed myself to sit on the edge of the narrow bed. My chest felt heavy, not just with sadness, but with something sharper, disrespect. It wasn't about the room. Not really. It was about being erased. But I had not lived 74 years to become invisible in my own home. I placed the photograph carefully on the small bedside table and sat quietly thinking. Sana believed I would accept this. That I would quietly adjust, shrink myself, make space for her comfort. She didn't know me, not really, and perhaps that was my fault. I had spent years being accommodating, avoiding conflict, choosing peace over pride. But peace, I had learned, is not the same as surrender. That evening I waited. I listened to the sounds of the house, the clinking of dishes, the hum of conversation, the television murmuring in the background. Life continued as if nothing had happened, as if I had not been pushed aside. When dinner was ready, I walked slowly to the dining table. My son Amir looked up and smiled faintly. "Ami, you're here. Sit." I took my seat, observing them both. Sana served the food without meeting my eyes. "Amir," I said gently, "did you know about the change in rooms?" He hesitated, glancing at Sana before answering. "Yes, Sana thought it would be better this way." "Better," I repeated. "For everyone," he added quickly. I nodded. "I see." Was a silence at the table, thick and uncomfortable. Then I did something they did not expect. I smiled. "Amir," I said calmly, "do you remember whose name this house is under?" He frowned slightly. "Yours, Ami." "But why, and do you remember who paid for it?" You and Abu, he replied. I leaned back slightly, folding my hands in my lap. Then perhaps, I said, my voice still soft but unmistakably firm, we should all remember that respect comes before rearranging someone else's life. Sana stiffened. Amia looked uneasy. Not asking for much, I continued. Only what is fair. What is that? Sana asked, her tone sharper now. I met her gaze. My room, I said simply. The tension in the room shifted instantly. Sana set down the serving spoon with a small clatter. We've already moved everything, she said. It's done. Then it can be undone, I replied. It's not practical, she argued. I've arranged everything, and I arranged that room for 43 years, I interrupted, still calm. I believe I have more experience. Cleared his throat. Ami, maybe we can compromise. No, I said, not raising my voice but leaving no room for doubt. This is not about compromise, this is about boundaries. The word hung in the air like a challenge. I welcomed you into this home, I said to Sana. I treated you as my daughter, but being family does not mean taking what is not yours. Her expression hardened. I'm not taking anything, I'm living here too. Yes, I agreed. And living together requires respect, not assumption. Was a long silence, then I stood up. I will give you until tomorrow morning, I said quietly. After that I will make arrangements myself. What kind of arrangements? She asked almost defiantly. I paused at the doorway and looked back. The kind that remind everyone exactly whose house this is. That night I did not sleep much, not because I was uncertain, but because I was resolute. In the morning I made a phone call. By noon a man arrived at the house, a legal advisor I had known for years. Calm, precise, and very clear in his words. We sat in the living room while Sana watched from a distance, her expression uneasy. I've reviewed your property documents, he said. Everything is solely in your name. Good, I replied. I want to ensure that remains clear. When he left, the house felt different, quieter, heavier. Sana approached me later, her confidence no longer as solid as before. You didn't have to do that, she said. I did, I replied. She hesitated. It was just a room. I looked at her steadily. I said. It was never just a room. That evening, without another word, she began moving her things back. I watched quietly as my room returned to me piece by piece, the bedspread replaced, the photograph restored, the air slowly reclaiming its familiar scent. And when it was done, I stood once again at the doorway. This time everything felt right. Amir came to me later, his face thoughtful. Ami, he said softly, I'm sorry, I should have spoken up. I placed my hand on his arm. I said, you should have. He nodded, understanding more than I needed to say. As for Sana, she never mentioned the room again. But something had changed between us, not distance but awareness. She knew now that kindness is not weakness. And I knew that silence should never come at the cost of dignity. Moral of the story. Respect is not given based on age alone, nor taken by force. It is maintained by boundaries. When you allow others to cross those boundaries in silence, you teach them to forget your worth. But when you stand firm, even quietly, you remind them exactly who you are.